And we are back. Apologies for being a little behind today. I'm having a little issues with my camera. Sometimes it'll time out on me and I can't see the recording, and then my eyes go a little wonky as far as I read the field all the time, and I do it because my eyes are always all over the place. And when I have the camera, it does make me kind of refocus, but if I can't see myself, I figure I'm a lot worse on those moments. So it's just what I do, and anyone who does these types of streams, you'll notice they probably do a lot of the same thing. They're always looking off because you're looking and you're reading the field and looking at information in the field you want to bring into the conversation. So when I do that, it's a lot easier for me to make sure I have it have the camera on, and it might pop off here and there, but eventually I kind of learned to live with it that way. So we'll see how it does today. So what we're going to talk about today is what owns us, and I imagine that's why I had issues with the camera, because obviously that's something that bothers me when it does that, when it times out on me. That it definitely kind of agitates me when it happens. So it's a small thing, but it is one thing that can kind of get on our nerves. So what owns us? Why do we give our power away to certain things and not other things? And when you start coming through certain parts of ascension, and basically in every part of ascension, in our awakening it's a little different. So if we break it out as we have our awakening, and that's usually the complete meltdown. It might not be the complete meltdown, but a majority of a meltdown of what's going on in your life, your human life. So either your human life stops working completely, or there are just subsets in your human life that just start to kind of implode, and it just really kicks you into what a lot of people will call dark night of the soul. And there can be a year wait between. I really don't like the word wait, but there can be gaps between your awakening and your ascension. And they're not normally, I went through a spontaneous awakening, which, I hear people say that, but for me, I don't know if I truly believe that. For most people, I think there are some people that probably experience that. I think for a lot of people, our human consciousness wants to believe we kind of got it all done at one time. All of a sudden, I understood everything. But there's a thing to understanding something and being able to reach a level of consciousness and then living from that consciousness. Those are two completely separate spectrums. So ascension is learning to live from that consciousness, and awakening is just when you get a realization that everything you've been working toward is just kind of bullshit. Some people call it dark night of the soul. Some people don't really like the way that sounds anymore, because the soul is our light, and it kind of seems like an oxymoron to call it dark. Some people call it just the dark night of the ego, where you start having to clear out a lot of your stuff. A lot of your stuff comes up to be reckoned with. And it can be really emotional time for a lot of us. And you have to start looking at what you value, what you don't value. And for a lot of us, we'll go through that awakening, and then we'll go into the spirituality realm, where we might go into, maybe we dive deeper into religion, more structured religion. It's going to be kind of different for everybody, and what they do and how they handle it. But you go kind of into a seeker mode of, why is nothing working, or why did this thing not work? For a lot of us, it can be just that one thing we wanted, whether it was a relationship, whether it was some type of success, job-related success. Sometimes it could be something revolving around relationships with our family, where we don't understand why. Why didn't that work? Why is this not going the way I want it to go? So we start looking for other reasons. We start looking for why a lot of it doesn't make sense. But it's kind of like you're watching a movie, and you're just at the very tip of the conspiracy theory. You're just at the very tip of figuring out what's going on. And you realize you had probably 12 more seasons of the show to really dive into what is really going on here, because this is really screwed up. I don't understand. So, and that's kind of what awakening is. It's that pilot, really, to kicking off what's going to happen later on for you and for all of us. So, like for me, I went through, my awakening started in March, April of 2013, but I didn't even start ascension until probably what I would say end of 2015. I had hints that's what I was going to be doing, but I didn't really start going all into that until then. So we're talking that's almost 2.5 years. I was kind of going through an awakening, And in that time, you kind of dabble. You go back into different human things. You might get into different relationships. That's one thing I did. You kind of go through different iterations, but you're not completely unconscious anymore, but you're not really conscious either. You're in this kind of subconscious state. Some people call it fourth dimensional. You have one foot in human reality still and one foot in fifth dimensional realities. I don't even know if I'd really call it that. I would think I was more seeking information, but still trying to retrofit a human life, not realizing all the stuff you have to let go of later. So the ascension process and the awakening, they're two separate things. They're two separate processes. They're two separate pieces of a much grander pie, in a sense. So when we hit awakening, we hit ascension. And in ascension, we are really, I'm going to use the word forced because that's what our human understands. Our human only is going to understand when we're forced to do something. Our human is not, it's not known to do something willingly. It's not going to do it when it's forced to do it. It's not going to do it. It's not going to do it when it doesn't think it has to do it. It's just not going to. It's only going to do it when it's forced to do it. So we might go through a time where we lose a lot of stuff. And it's a loss to the human because we still, it still had power over us. And what happens is all that stuff gets stripped away. And in the beginning, it can feel like a lot of stuff gets stripped away. Your money might go, relationships go, and it's like, what do you really identify with after a while? So when we start looking at what do we give our power away to, no matter how far you're into ascension, there still can be stuff that comes up that you don't realize you're giving your power away, but we still are. We still sense something that we go small over, that has more power than us. It causes a lot of victim. If you have victim energy coming up, it's because we're giving our power away to something. It can be the story itself we've created around what's happening. That can be what we're giving our power away to. It can be just the fear of something happening. It doesn't have to be something that owns us as specifically as a thing. It can just be the story. It can be judgment from other people. It can be, and remember, if it's judgment from others, it's really our own self-judgment. We cannot be judged if we don't judge ourselves. If we don't have that own internal judgment, other people can't really judge us. It's not possible for that to happen. So we go through a lot of iterations where we really have to be vigilant on what do we believe? What are we giving our power away to? What owns us? Like for a lot of people in the human reality, we're owned by the external world. So when we were in our human realities, and that some of us that still play in both worlds, what owns you? Is it the car you drive? Is it credit cards? Is it the house payment? Is it different people where in fact you feel like you can't do without them? And ownership means you're not in control of it anymore. It dictates the reality. And if something or someone is dictating the reality, technically by definition, it owns us. It is controlling us. And in third dimensional realities, when you're in those human realities, and all that means is it's the human consciousness that created that reality. When a human consciousness creates a reality, then we're forced to look at that reality and look at all the things. Is it status? Is it success? Is it being liked? That's a big one for a lot of people, is having people like them. Humans want to be liked. Humans don't want to be ostracized. It's part of our human DNA to want to be included in the group. When we start having to take ourselves away from the group, that is when we start really clearing a lot of stuff regarding inclusion and wanting to be in that. Even though human realities, they are cult mentalities. It is a cult in itself, all of the human beliefs and human realities. And we all belong to it. We were all card-carrying members of the human cult. There's really no way around it. We all participate in it at some point. And some participate in it more than others. Some people just never really mainstreamed into it in a sense. Other people quickly did, and depending on the level of success you had in the reality was how long you were kind of drinking the Kool-Aid of the reality. But when we talk about human realities and we talk about what we looked at as having more power than us. Whether even you can look at the court system, you can go the banking system, you can go as deep in as you want to go when you start really looking at what owns you then and what still owns you now. No matter if you're in an awakening, whether you're starting your ascension, whether you've been here for years. I mean, I've been in my ascension now for almost 10 years and completing certain parts of it, but there's still more programming to work through, and stuff comes up and you didn't even think you still had that in you. You didn't think you had that in you to be afraid of something. You know, what is the fear? What is the real fear? And most of the times the fear is what keeps us, and the story around the fear keeps us in that smaller shape, keeps us being owned by whatever that is, whatever that belief is. Sometimes it's just the belief that this could happen or that could happen. I see a lot of people talking about, you know, their vehicles. Cars are a big thing for people that, you know, because there's a freedom attached to a car. There's a freedom attached to having a car. And that's a big one that comes up for a lot of us in Ascension. You know, if you have a car, like I had a car that was worth, you know, a lot, tons of money, but, you know, it was a car I never used really anymore. So I'm like, why am I keeping this around? But it was a big thing to get rid of the car. Even though it wasn't something I used that much, it was still having it there. You know, the car was paid for, it was still having it that meant something to me. That it kept me in a way kind of in a human reality in some way. Something to kind of bond over is kind of the word I'm coming up with, but I don't know if that's really what I say, but it kind of is an inclusion part of it in a sense. And I mean, I have a different vehicle now. I have a much less expensive vehicle. And a lot of people look at my SUV and they're like, oh, that's terrible. And I'm like, I love this car. But you kind of have to, I can love it and appreciate it, but I'm not attached to it. You know, I can appreciate what it does and that it gets me from point A to point B. And, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And once we have kind of been stripped down of a lot of stuff, we appreciate things more. That's why it's such a critical part of the process to have to lose stuff. You know, for a lot of people, they will say, you know, money is power. And you see that in the human realities all the time. And in that consciousness, you can't argue with that. You can't argue with that statement. In a human consciousness, in the human realities, money is power. Because in a sense it is. Now, it's a false god, you know, which is, I never use that wording, but I'm going to use that here. It is a false god, a false power, because it's really not powerful. The only power it has is what the power we give it, right? So there's going to be a lot of realities we're going to go through where we kind of set and we say, boy, if I only had money to fix this, if I only had money to, oh, it looks like it's going to storm. It was so sunny, and now it's gotten dark. There's so many realities we go through where we'll say that, you know, we'll say, if only I had money to do this, if only I had money to do that. Because even when we get to certain parts of our ascension, we're still not trusted with money yet, you know, and it can take years of just having barely just enough to get by. And I'm mentioning money here because it's a big process for a lot of us. It is a massive process for a lot of us where, you know, you have enough to kind of get by, but you don't really have extra than that. And that's because you learn to appreciate everything you have. And for some of us, it gets more extreme than others. You know, it kind of depends on what we're trying to clear up from old human realities too. Like, we're carrying a lot of stuff over from human realities as far as money obligations. We might not have the money to clear those things up. We might not have money that comes in for years later. I mean, for most, it is a minimum of 2 years. It can be longer than that, depending on if we're still being greedy about the money we have. You know, when you get into different levels of ascension and different levels of really understanding abundance, really understanding things that own us, we start to understand that money is not just for us. It's for the collectives. It's what can we do for the collectives with the money? What is the best intent of it? You know, I always would hear people say, well, if I won the lottery, you know, if I came to large sums of money, I'd give it to all my family and friends. That's why you don't win the lottery because might not be the highest line thing to do with that money. Giving someone money to get out of certain situations that they've kind of boxed themselves into might prevent them going through their ascension process, prevent them going through what they have to go through for their awakening, prevent them from having to detach from all these things. It gets us to cut the cords. And sometimes the cords are severed very quickly because we don't want to give that thing up, and money is an example because of the amount of gravitas it has in the human reality. So it is a big one for a lot of us when we move through that, because we have to learn to let that go. We have to learn to understand that it is a power source in human realities, but it's not a power source in higher realities. So you're not given it. You have to look at it almost like a video game, in a sense, where at different levels you go in the game, you get more stuff. Now I'm not a huge video game player, but the ones I have played, I do know that, the higher you go along the game, you get more stuff. You get more tools to work with. You get more powers. You get more intrinsic powers. Sometimes you get just more stuff in general to work with. You're able to do more things. You're able to, but you've also proven a certain amount of, boy, I had the word and I lost it. You've got a certain level of competence within the game, right? So now you can have this or you can have that, which before I wasn't going to give it to you because you wouldn't have known how to use it anyway, and you wouldn't have used it in the correct way. So you didn't get the superpower. You didn't get this asset, whatever that asset's going to be. So we kind of start getting those things, and we can even see sometimes years out when, okay, I can see that if it's money we're talking about, it's going to come back in maybe around this year or that year. But some of this other stuff has to be cleared up first. You have to learn a whole new way to think. And these are things that we are not given in higher realities until we know we can be trusted with them. We know what to do with them. And that can take a while, especially for the money thing, because it is so coveted in the human realities, but for the wrong reasons. And wrong is probably not the word I want to use, for very distorted reasons. It's not coveted because of its value itself. It's what it can do and how it can control and how it can manipulate and how it is used for certain things. It's funny, I just finished watching The House of Usher, and there was just this line in it that was just so true. And when we're in our human realities, we can hear this stuff, but until we get to certain levels of ascension and certain levels of compassion for our human existence, and everyone's still in a human existence, and to see the distortions of what's going on and will be happening in all the collectives going into 2024, which is going to be a massive year for a lot of the collectives. What we're seeing now in the collectives, it's nothing compared to what we're going to see by the end of 2024. I think it's going to make 2020 look just ridiculous in a sense of the magnitude of what we thought 2020 was, of what 2024 is going to be. Because, 2023 was kind of finishing up that 3-year cycle, 2022, 2023, of the whole COVID realities. And now we're going to go into something bigger, more visceral in a sense, and more heavy-hearted is probably the word I want to use there. It's just going to be a bigger clearing. It's going to be deeper. It's not going to be what 2020 was. It's going to kind of be 2020 on steroids in a sense of the stuff we're going to see. And we already start to see it playing out. When we talk about the eclipses and we talk about all the bigger astrological events that go on in the year and all the calendar, linear calendar events and the equinoxes and the solstices, they're all markers in a sense of marking, kind of bringing through the next year's template where you can kind of start to see what's happening, kind of start to see what's going to happen. And when we look through, and even in our little microcosm of our world, which is massive to us, our world is, everything that we allow in it. We are the prime creator of our world. We see our world, and we can see what's coming in, what's going out, what we're being shown. Okay, you can't keep this, and maybe right in this moment, it's not the time that you might not have the energy to get rid of this, in a sense, as far as money or time or whatever it's going to take to get rid of it, knowledge, consciousness, whatever it's going to take to kind of get rid of this or align it. But no, it's got to go. It's kind of on borrowed time. So sometimes your universe might give you a time limit. It might set, and even if your universe doesn't, if it is still tied to a human reality, that might give you a time limit. And you might have to really look at that and go, okay, do I have to adhere to this time limit? Am I owned by this time limit now? I have to figure it out by then. That's just a time someone else, a human reality's put on it. It might not be divinely aligned for us to do it in this moment. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. Let me look at this and see. Is it time for me to do this? When it's divine timing and aligned for me to do it, it's going to not be such a question, and when we keep having a question about what is aligned here, what is divinely aligned here, and divinely aligned really just means it's aligned from our highest place, our highest aspects. What is the highest aligned thing I can do? It might not be the highest of the high in that moment, but it's highest aligned in that moment. And sometimes that's all we can do, and what we can look for to try to figure out what that is. But back to, and I totally got sidetracked on what I was going to say, but in the Fall of the House of Usher, one of the lines that, I don't know how I don't think I said it. I think I got on it and I lost it for a second. It was a line about humanity and how we allow so many things to happen all around the globe. We allow so much poverty. We allow so many people to have less than other people. There's such a massive divide in wealth on the planet. It's such a massive divide. And if the very wealthy would give up so much a year, just for 1 year, we could fix everything. And whether the validity of that, would it take a year, would it take 3 years, would it take 6 months, I don't know. In that sense, it's really not the point. But the point is, it could be done. We could fix a lot of stuff. But because we just choose not to do that. We choose to continue it the way it is. We choose to continue to, pillage nature. We choose to continue to do that. We could stop doing that. We could stop building. We could stop doing all the things we do, but we don't do that. We continue to go down the same track. It doesn't matter how many things get thrown in the way. We bully our way through. That's what the human ego is going to do. It's going to bully its way through. And it's going to continue to bully its way through and think that it's bullying its way through, when in a sense it's really not. It's just kind of feeding into its own demise in a sense, because that type of behavior will only be tolerated for so long. It'll only be tolerated for so long before it's like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I've heard so many people. I live in a very nature-rich area right now. It's part of the reasons that I was here. And a lot of deer, a lot of groundhogs, possums. I got everything, everything around here. And I hear so many people that will comment about the deer and say, oh, they're just useless. They don't matter. I don't know why we have to have them. And when you think about how nature had supported humanity over centuries, and how now we look at it and now we don't want to support it in any way. Now we feel like it's not necessary. We don't need it. Where in a different dimension, a different era, that was what kept humanity going. But we have no appreciation for that. It's just what impacts us right now. So what humanity chooses to do, and what we chose to do, and we were in it too. And it's kind of you start to be in these places in Ascension where you can see how a lot of this stuff is going to play out, and you can understand why it has to play out that way. You can understand why there has to be a force to do something for it to happen. Catastrophic things have to happen for certain things to shift, because when we were in those realities, or whether it doesn't even matter where you're at, what part of Ascension you're in, what part of Awakening you're in, pre-awakening, post-awakening, pre-ascension, ascension, and there's an ascension of full body consciousness, but then there's still, after that, you're still ascending. So ascension, in a sense, never really ends. There are certain massive milestones in ascension, like, full body ascension, where your whole body is brought into the fifth dimension, and you live that fully. You step out and live that fully. And in fact, you don't play in the human realities anymore, but sometimes there might be stuff that comes up that still will pull us back. I talk a lot about different things that sometimes things aren't aligned, but you can't really align them yet. And I've had a couple of those things that have come back for my universe to say, okay, you've got to try to align these. And maybe it's not right now, but it's going to come up, because these kind of can't go forward anymore. So a lot of that stuff, we feel like it happens to us, but it does kind of happen for us, because we have to clear this stuff out. We can't keep it going. It's just not something we can continue to keep around in our field. We're going into a different phase now. We can't take this stuff with us anymore. I did a video, I think I posted it a couple days ago, but I think I actually did it a few weeks ago, about whether something bothers us or whether we're really not bothered by something, or if we're ignoring something. And it is kind of two sides of the same coin, because we'll feel like we're not bothered by it. You know, I'm not really bothered, but maybe I'm just ignoring it. Maybe it does bother me, but I don't want to deal with it. There's a lot of things we don't want to deal with. And when we get into embodying God, our God particle, we activate our God particle, we get into warrior energy. It's kind of, some people will call it warrior energy, some people call it archangel energy. It kind of came to me as archangel energy, but there is warrior energy. And warrior energy, when you're in a 6-dimensional consciousness and an 8-dimensional consciousness or a 10-dimensional consciousness, they're all different. It's a different cadence, but a different type of energy. So you're going to do something more with that energy. You're going to go to a deeper level with that energy, even though it is a similar theme to something you might have been aligning your own life with warrior energy before. Now maybe you can assist others in aligning their life when you hit it again. You have to now align your life more. You can't have anything hanging out there anymore, because you're going to go through a different gateway, a different portal. You're going to go to a different space, and this stuff can't come with us. Now, the challenging part for a lot of us is we want to align things quickly, you know, and we want to go through it quickly. And I know I've been saying that a lot the last couple of weeks. I've been working through a lot of stories on stuff and working through a lot of things that have popped back up for me to align. You know, what's my pattern? What's my theme? What am I going to try to go back to? You know, what was my go-to? And can I still go to that? And you start to see the distortions around the stuff we used to do. And, you know, I can't really do that right now. You know, I always say, if it's not in your reality, it can't help you align something because it's technically not there. Now, if we see we're supposed to go out and get something, that's kind of different. But if it's people that aren't there, we can't then show up on their doorstep and try to get them to help us align something, because they're not here. They're not offering to be here. They haven't offered. They haven't asked what's going on. They haven't asked, you know, how are things? Can I assist with something? If they haven't done those things, then they're not aligned to be here. So we can't then reach out and try to pull them in. There's a disrespect to that. And as humans, we would have done that. You know, we would have continually done that again and again and again and again, because we fear the other side of it. We fear what happens. It, in a sense, owns us. It owns us as to, what are we going to do now? You know, what is my next phase? I don't want B to happen, so I'm going to now try to control A. And as long as I plan on controlling A and do things that aren't aligned, in a sense. So there'll be sometimes you'll do things that are aligned for a while because it's clearing something different. You know, it's clearing a different part of reality. It might be for someone else to work through selfishness. It might be for someone else to share more. Sometimes you might see that it's aligned for me to do this because you can see the whole thing and how it's shaping up. That person might not understand, but you can see it. But when you maybe do it 6 months later, or maybe 6 minutes later, time doesn't really matter. You'll see, okay, wait, that's not aligned anymore. It used to be aligned in a sense because it was clearing other things. But now you get to the part where it's not aligned. I mean, an example of that would be if you are in a reality with people and you're bringing one thing to the table, but it's not money, but someone else is bringing money to the table. But all of a sudden they don't want to bring money to the table because it's their money. Even though, you know, we might be doing a lot of other things in the reality that is just as important as money. But they still covet the money more. The other person in reality still think that's more important. So as we might have to say, okay, well, that's the agreement. You know, the agreement was this. And then that's what we understand, that it's for both of us at that point. And we have to learn to be able to do that. And part of that's living in unity consciousness, where you can see everyone's bringing something to the table. And everyone's as important in the reality to set up the reality. But there might come a time later on where now that's become the go-to. You know, now that's become the go-to, and that's not the agreement anymore. Now we're in a different reality where it's not that way anymore. So we really have to be honest with ourselves. And a lot of it is just when this stuff comes up to go beyond just the initial thing that got us. You know, the initial thing that got us upset, that got us to feel like we are unraveling in a sense. We're triggered. We're feeling like we're a victim to the whole thing. You know, we have all this stuff going on. And we have all this stuff going on. We really have to be mindful of the fact that because it's all going on, because we're dealing with all this stuff, that we have to find the consciousness to really be able to look at it and really be able to see what is going on, what is highest aligned. Can I go back to my go-to? Is that still aligned, or is that not aligned anymore? Is that no longer something that's aligned? Is that no longer something I can do? You know, is that now me going back into an old reality? Does it go deeper than that? It could be aligned, but I don't want to deal with the aftermath of that. I don't want the judgment of that. That's a whole nother thing we have to unpack. So a lot of people will talk about, and to a sense we go through this, so we go through one iteration of, let's say, getting through victim energy, right? And we go through it and we're like, wow, if I could just bust through all my victim energy, then I don't have to go through any more realities that release victim energy. And then we can spend our whole day just looking for programs and looking for miserable things to go through to clear all our victim energy. Whereas when it has to go, it does happen very organically and sometimes out of left field. I've had a lot of stuff lately that's kind of come out of left field. Some things I would label as an exciting thing, and other things my human would label as that's not so exciting. It's having me bust through a lot of fear. They're still as equally, our soul is going to see them exactly the same way. They're just important for the next phase you have to go through. Even though our human is going to label this as, this is something I'm more excited about than this. I wish this wasn't happening, but I'm excited about this thing happening. Not understanding that they're all intertwined. There's no, that it's all happening for us to get to the next level. It's just, we have to decide for what we're trying to get to. Am I clearing victim energy? Am I clearing fear? Does this thing still own me? Does anything in the human realities, in the human beliefs, the human consciousness, in the human constructs, does anything there still own me where I am afraid of, oh no, what is the human reality going to do? The human reality lives through intimidation. It lives through manipulation. That's what it's built on. If you can't be manipulated, you can't be intimidated, then human realities really have no hold anymore. But for a while they will. And we really have to be able to look at what is controlling us. What do we not want to let go of? Is it status? Is it success? Is it money? Is it our things? You get to a point where things don't matter, and they don't matter anymore. And once you go through one iteration of that, then because the next things you get come when you're in a higher consciousness, you realize you don't put the clause of attachment to things as much. You don't look at things the same way. They're there, it's also there, but when it's time for them to go, then they'll go, and then all of a sudden I'll go to the next thing. You can just start to feel that and see that and understand that there are some things in our human realities we used to try to avoid, and we get into our ascended realities and we go, why do these things still happen? This is supposed to be, all bliss and magic. And there are times when we feel that, and there are times when you've had so much bliss and magic and higher consciousness activation, higher soul activation, higher light activation, that your body reaches a different level of consciousness. Your body levels up. So your body's going to level up. Okay, you're going to have more stuff you can do. But before we can give you more tools that you can work with, you need to pass this last trial. You need to look at this last thing. And it might have been what 4 years ago would have been your greatest fear. And now you're like, okay, there's still fear there, but maybe it's not as great as I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's not as big of a deal anymore. We might be researching things and saying, okay, how would this work if this reality worked out in the worst possible way, or what our human would see as the worst possible way? Let me play that out. Okay, do I really believe that's going to happen? And those are the things we play with. Those are the things we gain awareness on and see, does this bring up fear if this really happens this way? So when we start going into questions about what we give our power away to, what owns us? What do we have this great fear of losing? It's easy to say, oh no, that doesn't own me, until you have a fear of losing it or you lose it. And you have to pick up the pieces after that. I always say when anyone's still in their human reality, you can observe when no one has had to lose anything, that they're fine with losing everything because they haven't lost anything yet. It's easy to say I'm fine with that going until that goes and then 18 other things go with it. And that's when we really have to go deeper inside of ourselves, because that's all kind of we have left. And that pushes us farther and farther inside, because we need the enlightenment. We need the consciousness. We need to figure out what's going on. So we go deeper and deeper in to figure out, why is this such a shit show all of a sudden? Why did I go from fifth dimensional consciousness of bliss and magic to now everything's in disarray? Where did I go wrong? Where was my wrong turn? I said that so many times in my ascension process. Where did I derail? Because everything was fine, and now I'm getting hit with everything. Then I don't know what I'm going to do with all this stuff. Or this was okay, and now it's not okay again. What's going on? So, but they all happen for a reason, you know. And that's it's an old human adage. You'll hear people say. My grandmother used to say it. Oh, it all happens for a reason. It all happens for the best. Now, a human reality, our human consciousness is going to look at that and spin it one way, and in a way that is true. You know, and a higher conscious reality would go, yeah, it all happens the way it's supposed to happen. It's all for your greater good, even if the time you don't see it. You know, everything will happen during your ascension process. I promise you will go back at some point. You'll reach a level of consciousness and be able to go back and understand why it had to be exactly like that. It had to be exactly that way. You know, it had to go down exactly the way it went down, or you were going to get a much rougher road. And if you tried to control it, you tried to run away from it, you tried to go back to an old pattern, try to fix it, you tried to do a human fix on it, it was going to cause so much more suffering and so much more misery than what clearing the program was. And that might have felt miserable and heavy and rough. But that was nothing compared to the physical reality. There's some things energetically I had to go through and just set through the fear and set through the fact I couldn't fix it. You know, I did not have the money, the time, the whatever it took to fix these realities, and I had to set through the fear what was going to happen if those things, I didn't human fix them. What was going to happen if I just let those things set? But if I tried to fix them, if I tried to actively do this or go back and manipulate them in any way, I can see now how I would have gone through so many rougher physical realities, where most of mine at that point, they were just energetic working through it all. You know, there's a great line in a book I read years ago, and it was some book about broken hearts and relationships. I read it so long ago, but I remember there's a line in there where this woman was like completely having an absolute meltdown at the trash can, taking her trash out. And then there was a moment of clarity where it's like, okay, nothing's really happened to you right now. You're just clearing all this stuff, but nothing's really going on. There's no physical reality triggering all this anger, all this fear to come up. It's just coming up. Nothing's happening. And there is a comfort in, I have all this stuff coming up energetically, all this fear, all this victim, all this stuff. But technically nothing's happening. You know, none of these things are happening, but I have all this fear and all this stuff all this stuff happening. So what might have felt like a rougher road energetically, like I say, I promise you'll look back and understand the way rougher road it would have been if we tried or had even the tools to try to retrofit it when we weren't ready to get them. We didn't understand why we couldn't handle it. You know, if you need money to fix something, if you had money to fix it, you might have started down a whole different road. And I promise you wouldn't be able to fix it for long. Even things I tried to fix with money, I quickly found the money got taken away, so I couldn't finish the fix. The fix was only half finished. I couldn't finish it because you weren't supposed to do that. You know, for some, it's like you can do that here, but you can't do that here. So it's a balance, and it's staying with that connection inside to figure it out and being able to understand it. And even if you understand it months later on why did this have to happen, it does happen for a reason, and it's happening for our greater good, even at the time our human does not feel like it is. So, all right, that was really a lot longer than I wanted to go on my opening monologue. Okay, I don't have any questions, so I think I'm going to end it on that today. So hopefully that will help, and my camera did cut out about a minute into this, so hopefully my eyes are not all over the place crazy, like, you know, too distracting. I tried to kind of refocus, but okay, I guess that's it, and I will see everyone next time. Bye.